Here I want to show you how you can save and load structured data to and from files on disk. As before, my data is going to be in the form of CD records. So that's a record containing 4 fields: a name, which is a string of 30 characters, the artist, which is also a string of 30 characters, the price, which is a double, and CD label, which is once again a string of 30 characters. So let me just run the program to show you what it does. It has my little form here. The form automatically loads the existing data file which I've previously saved. And I can verify it's got a certain number of records by clicking the Count Records button, and it shows me it contains 10 records. I can load a record number. First is at 0, second at 1, and I can load other numbers of record later in the data file. If I want to change a record, I can make modifications and save the changes. And I can verify that, so that's record number 7. I'll shut down my program, run it again. It automatically once again loads its data file. Remember, I made those changes to record number 7 by incrementing the number, and there it is. So it saved back my data into the data file. And if I want to create a completely new record, then I just enter some data. Each of these text fields provides data for one of the fields of the new record. And I save it this time as a new record, so it creates a new record and it adds it on to the end of the existing records. So now I count records, and this time I've got 11 records. Close it down, run it again, just to verify that the data file has been updated. So again, it reads the new data in, and record number 10 is the record that I added to the end of the data file. Now, the data file itself is saved in a non-text format. You can see that some text is recognizable, that's some of the strings that have been entered for the string fields, but it's by no means a standard text file. There are other characters in there which are used to delimit records and are managed by the Delphi or Free Pascal and Lazarus system. Let's see how this has been programmed. I'll start by looking at the code that creates and saves a new record. The event handler here contains just one line of code, and in fact the code for the Save Changes button, which modifies an existing record, is identical apart from the value of the Boolean argument, which is false. Now let's look at the Save CD Rec procedure. This is where all the real work is done. First of all, this procedure calls the fields OK function, which you'll find higher up in the unit. The fields OK function checks that the user has entered valid data. If so, the remainder of the code in Save CD Rec is executed. And we now arrive at this crucial line of code. A sign file is a Delphi and Free Pascal procedure which associates the name of an external file with a file variable. And here, rec file is my file variable. You'll find it declared towards the top of the unit as rec file, file of CD. Rec underscore file underscore name is the name of the disk file itself, and it's declared in the const section towards the top of the unit. It is the file variable rec file that I shall use when manipulating the file itself. First of all, my code uses the standard function file exists to check if the file mycds.dat exists. If it does not exist, then the code in the Save CD Rec procedure executes the rewrite procedure. The rewrite procedure both creates and opens a file. A file must be opened before you can save any data into it. If the file already exists, you don't need to create it, but you do need to open it. The reset procedure opens an existing file. This is the code that executes if mycds.dat does exist. There now follows some code that initializes the fields of a new CD record using the data from the edit fields on the form. Notice that the strings are of fixed length. That makes it easy to save and load them to and from disk, as each chunk of data, that is, each string, is of a known size. It would be much more difficult and error-prone to save and load strings without a predetermined length. Next, you'll see that I test the value of the Boolean parameter save as new. Now recall that this value is passed as true by the save as new button click procedure, and it's passed as false by save changes button click. If it's true, then the user wants to create a new record and save it at the end of the data file. And this is the code that executes. The seek procedure is used to find the record at a specific position in the file. In a so-called random access file, such as a file of records, the file size function returns the number of records in the file. This finds the position of the last record in the file and makes it the currently active record position. Another function, filepos, may be used to identify the currently active record position in the file. This is how I assign the current record number to the global variable recpos. This allows me to display the record number in a label. If, on the other hand, the user clicks the Save Changes button, the program doesn't need to create a new record. Instead, it needs to save any modifications back into the record being edited at its original position in the data file. So rather than seeking to the end of the file, we need to seek to the position of the current record number. Recall that the program stores the current record number in the recpos variable. So this line of code seeks to the current record. Having found the correct position in the data file, we now need to write the data, and this is done by this line. Finally, having written the data, I have to close the file like this. Now, at first sight, all these file handling routines may look quite confusing, so let's simplify it to its bare essentials. Here are the fundamental procedures needed to open an existing typed file, such as a file of records, and write a record into it. In real code, the arguments are replaced by actual identifiers, like this. Reading data from a previously saved file back into memory is similar to the process for saving data. You have to call assign file, reset, seek, and at the end close file. But instead of using the write procedure to save data, you have to call read to load data. And you must make sure that the read procedure is told to read records of exactly the same type that was saved into the file. That ensures that it reads in the right amount of data to initialize each field of each record. For more information on file I/O, be sure to try out the sample CD dbase project and read Chapter 6 of the Little Book of Pascal.